this was the fast and loose demo, I think. I can't remember. Which is probably appropriate to the theme. Someone just insulted me by saying that, or tried to insult me by saying that all I can do is draw faces, and I can't evolve because I keep doing the same thing over and over again. I didn't know whether to thank him or not, because it's like, so I draw faces. That's it. I do draw other things and paint other things, as you know, but I choose to draw faces. That's the whole point. I like drawing faces, and the number I've done, the way that they've, the execution is evolved and all that. It's kind of like a quest, if you like. I mean, I'm not looking to become better at making photo replicas. That's never been, as you've seen from this morning, as they're evolving. You can see that that's not the case. I've got to admit, in the first stage, I probably did do, look at the greats, the Oliver Sins and all those sort of people, and admire. I mean, I still admire them, but it's no longer my definition, if you like. So, I think that's probably one of the things. I mean, the argument was with this guy was that he just didn't understand because I said that drawing wasn't art, and the reason, if you've heard me talking about this before, the reason why I say that is because when I did the Sunday morning lessons, there was a guy there that was I told him about him because he got also hung up on this idea that he's going to create a masterpiece, and very precious about he did it, and the execution of it, and how he approached it, and all that kind of stuff. And he just got himself in knots about doing it. So I said to him, forget about trying to create a masterpiece. It's not art that you're trying to create. And this definition of art varies. And this individual that's been having a go at me, his definition of art is completely different to mine. And that's good. That's how it should be. But he took it on himself just to, judge me for because I'm not like him, which is that's a problem with the world, isn't it? People like that. But anyway, he's I just batted him off, and that thing about you can't reason with them is one of them. And if their level of comprehension is so narrow, you've no chance of enlightening them. So it's better just to bat them away. I mean, I used to have clients like that. Just don't worry, you pretty little head, it'll work. That was the usual way of getting rid of a client who was insistent and being involved in something. But they're doing things over and over again, which kind of ties into this. What I was saying this morning about loving what you do. I actually like drawing faces. I don't know, it's just a thing, it's my thing, and it's okay. Because it's my thing, I don't judge anybody else's unless they're going to come at me and say mine's better than yours. Then obviously I would, but if they're just going to just do their thing, let them do their thing. But all I was saying about it isn't art was trying to alleviate some of the pressure that this guy was feeling when he was trying to draw, and it worked. I mean, I think I told you within 40 minutes he was making great drawings. He was an engineer. Or a quantity surveyor, something like that, something to do with drains. Anyway, and he could map out a drainage system and all that, just scribbling it on it. And again, that's the way that drawing is a tool to explain things and understand things, and all that it's fantastic, all that stuff. So at that point, drawing isn't art; it's just a method of communicating a concept or an idea or instructions. But he was doing this, and he was showing me, how he would explain a drainage system to a non-believer, and I said, well, just do that. Forget about trying to make the perfect work of art. Do what you've just done to show me how you would explain the drainage system, and that's what he did. And within, I think it was about 20 minutes, he was drawing great portraits. Not like works of art type of portraits, but portraits that were so pure and real, you know. And that's the thing that I'm interested in, alleviating the, you know, the pressure of having to, you know, the expectation thing. Again, that's where the expectation thing comes from. But as I said, my thing is, I think if you asked me if I had to draw all the things, I would draw all the things. And over the years, I have drawn all the things, you know, from horse and carts and everything in between, you know. I mean, the classic one is you've seen the technical illustration stuff that I've done. And so I've drawn everything, but I choose to draw faces. It's not a matter of not evolving. In fact, I think I've evolved to a point where this guy is just not in my universe. And he kept talking about art is the universe, you know, all that nonsense. But that's the trouble with some of the, and the thing is that, and I tried to explain that when people have this idea of creating art, you know, it's going to be art that I create, it may be that their perception is what this guy does, which is not great art, and really that should not be their perception. So another reason why my big thing about with the workshops, for instance, is the reset. You know, people have to get out of their heads. There's a given way of doing this. You know, there is one way and that's it. You know, and this guy was proving the point. You know, because I wasn't evolving to his liking, then I wasn't an artist, and that's fine. He can think what he likes. I don't care. But as I said, these people like that create a perception that somebody might think was a definition of art, and consequently think they have to. And there's lots of people like that. I'm just watching the Chinese entry to there was hundreds of people, 751 to get 7,000 someone wanted to get these 750 places, and you look at the drawings and you think everyone's exactly the same. What's going on there? What is going? How can that be? It can only be that every one of them is following the same method, the same handbook. How can every piece of art be exactly the same, every drawing? And then it's perpetuated by the people that run these places, and they say, oh, it must always be like this, and consequently, you know, the people that want to get in think they have to be like that. Can it ever be any different? Can it not? Because they don't conform to the, and they listed the things, tonal control and proportions, and you know, all the usual sort of mantra type of stuff as to the the definition of a successful candidate. And I thought, crikey, I'd hate to have to do something like that. You know, it's just, and then as I said, that perpetuates the myth of what this is really about. And I think that's probably the hardest thing for me, because I'm trying to get across to people, it is what you want it to be. You know, whatever you designate, providing it's honest and pure, and it's your response to something, then that's good enough for me. You know, this thing about each of us having a different response, you know, to another human. And in turn, if we're artists, our response should be different. You know, the way you create your response should be different to someone else's. It's got to be, hasn't it? And that. So how can you judge that as any less of artistic than someone else's, whose response is completely different to yours? That's back to that live and let live thing. You know, because I don't see the world like you see the world doesn't make me a bad person. You know what I mean? It's like, and that, you know, all this stuff. This is the thing about the guy said, tell the students that you're not curing cancer or world peace. Hang on a minute. I reckon that if artists were in charge, there would be world peace, or they'd be pretty close to it, and all the funds that are being channeled into killing people will be channeled into creating cures for cancer. And you're not telling me they couldn't do it, because they could make a vaccine for a made up bloody virus within months, and they're not going to tell me they can't do the same for cancer, because they can't. They just don't want to cure it. That sounds like that's the case. I mean, having being somebody who suffered it, I still think that. And but that's the thing. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to create. It may not be significant in world terms, but if more people were creative or created something, regardless of whether it's just a load of faces or whether it's some fancy lick and stick kind of, which is what this guy does, tears things up, sticks it on a canvas and then paints over it. Usual sort of stuff. You've seen it. They call themselves fine artists. I call them decorators at best. See, I'm getting a bit bitchy now about responding to this guy. I should have. I mean, it's on Instagram, so I can't. You can't. What can you say? You can't tell him what you think. Nobody. The thing is that I don't think anybody would tell you to your face half the stuff they tell you. They'll say to you on Instagram. It's easy to be brave, but anyway, like I say, the pleasure, as I said this morning, the joy of doing this, and your individual response is the the reason why it works, and the problem, and that's the major problem, because it creates so many. Imagine trying to put people's work into genres, because everybody's work's different. So it can't be, can it? It has to be, the galleries have to have genres, and this is why there's a lot of people will talk about sticking to one style, because you can sell, because people buy into a style, they get used to that, they'll always return to that style. If they liked it once, they'll like it again, kind of thing. Which is a terrible thing for an artist. I mean, I probably fall into that category because I just draw faces. So I probably just fall into that. Oh, he does it every time. But the trouble is with drawing faces is you can't. Nobody wants somebody else's face on the wall. They want, their loved ones on the wall, but they won't want some stranger's face on the wall. I won't anyway. But that's probably why I end up trying to help people to do it, because I know that you can't sell unless I do some kind of arty-farty kind of thing, floating in a field kind of thing, and light and curtains and usual sort of stuff. Unless I do that and create more of a narrative, which I've done. You've seen me do narrative stuff, and I could then they might sell. But again, I'm still not bothered about them selling. It's the thing about it's good because it sells, or it's good because other people like it. I'm not in that place. It's good because I like doing it. It's good because I like it. That's why it's good. It's not somebody else is going to tell me whether it's good or not. But as I said, the thing about it is, I think you've just got to be yourself. You just got to, whatever it is. If it is just drawing faces and people thinking it's the lack of evolution because of it and all that, it's fine. It's none of their business, I suppose. That's what I'm trying to say, as to how you respond to the world, how you create. It's none of their business. It's only your business. It's only you who matter. That's the thing. Not somebody who's got some kind of warped idea of what art is. Or even wants to define it as art. I always think that's quite an arrogant thing. This is my art. Is it really? Who's decided it's art? It's that, and I think that's a little bit of ignorance as well. Only the enlightened would realize how stupid that comment would be. I've still got my tramp gloves on, as you can tell. It's just dropping again. The temperature's dropping again now. It was freezing when I came in. It's freezing again now. So I know it's not cold by world standards. I can't even tell you what it is, but it's probably about, I don't know, 5 degrees or something. Tell me my phone, I suppose, but I've no idea whether or not it will be accurate. Let me tell you what it is. And whether or not what it is in here, I've no idea. I just know it's blooming cold. It says, oh, it's -2. So that's pretty cold, isn't it? That's why my fingers are off. That's why I'm wearing my gloves. I'm still on with the, in terms of the doing of this, I'm still on this meandering, no finish kind of kick. You know, I did that thing this morning. It was just for the joy of doing it thing. And I did do the, you know, this one. I think ink just. I did do that one. Yes, I think that was, when was that one? That was the Fast and Loose, was it? I have no idea. It might have been. Anyway, but you can see there's this at the moment, and I think it's probably I'm trying to get away from the over finish thing, you know, the overworked tonal thingy. I'm trying to get away from that, and not for any other reason than I enjoy this, the spontaneity of this, and the, you know, the lines and the marks have much more life in them, and I enjoy that because that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get the life of the subject. So as soon as it becomes a production, I kind of chase that away, or I feel as though I chase it away. I can keep it sometimes, and if you look at some of the drawings I've done on Instagram or wherever we connected, you'll see that they are, some of them are actually finished, but still have that essence, that life about them. I think that's the hardest thing, you know, that to actually respond in this way, to make it like, you know, fresh and new and all that sort of thing, and then stay with it. Don't lose it by overworking it in places. And that one this morning, for instance, it did get a little bit like that. Where's that one gone now? Yeah, this one. But I managed to keep it, and it's magnificent, that, isn't it? I mean, I know I'm saying that, but it is. You know, I mean, there's things that's wrong in it, and why are these marks there, and it's just what's happening on the chin. But look at it, and however I can't remember. It was 35 minutes or something like that. You know, you don't want to lose that. If you can help it, you don't want to lose that freshness. So I think that's probably why I'm as this one is working in a particular way. I think it's not it's not so much a deliberation. You know, I'm trying to make them look sort of loose and sketchy. It's because I'm accepting those early marks. But one of the things about the doing this is that there is that level of rawness about it that you've got to kind of learn to live with. If it's going to be all about precision and making everything perfect, it's a long road. You know what I mean? It's a long road to get, but while you're doing that, you're forgetting the most important bit, which is to connect to the subject, because you're too busy trying to replicate the subject. And I think that is probably one of the most difficult things for people to do. It's just forget trying to replicate it and concentrate on responding to it. Once you get that in your head, once you get to a point where this is just about response, everything. You see, the thing is that everything changes, not just the execution in general, but when you make the marks. You know, I've decided that it's not that important for it to be that detailed, so that it doesn't have to be that precise. But for some reason, it ends up being enough. if you know what I mean. It ends up being enough to actually illustrate or to communicate what's going on. And that's a consequence of this freeing attitude. You know, that it doesn't matter if it's not a precise execution. I've accepted it's not going to be a precise execution, but I'm going to tell you a story about this face. And that guy says I'm not evolving, and that's it. I think that of all the things is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to tell you about this person that I can see and what I feel about them. I'm trying to tell you that. Now, if that's just a replication, if that's the only way I can tell you about this person, then that's what it'll be. But if it's not about the replication, if it's about, this is the thing about self-portraits. I see this all the time. There was a woman this morning a young girl making a self-portrait, and she got you've probably seen this one. She got the work stuck on the mirror, a big mirror, and then behind, so she could see her face above it. And then she just made a copy of her face. And I'm thinking, is that what a self-portrait is? Is it just here? You can look at me. I'm exactly the same in this self-portrait as you can see in the mirror. I mean, it's uncanny that you made an exact copy of your face, which I can already see anyway, but nevertheless, you've made an exact copy. No, your marks weren't different. It didn't attempt to be fresh and new and all those sort of things. And you know, there wasn't, you didn't up the colors or anything. You just made an exact copy of your own face. So, and what's all that about then? There's a guy that runs a self-portrait group on Facebook. Now, his self-portraits are proper. I mean, they just live, you know. And I'm not sure that the people that are in this group understand the ability this guy's got. You know, I'm not sure he knows. But you look at his self-portrait and you think, man, there's more to him than just getting his eyes in the right place. You know, it's like, and to some extent, you want it to be exactly the opposite of that. You don't want it to be eyes in the right place. You want it to, if it's important that the eyes are in the right place, but it's not always, is it? There are things about our faces that are peculiar, obviously, which will encapsulate our persona. And so, since you know yourself better than anybody else knows, show people that when you make a self-portrait. Show people who you really are. Now, that might be completely off the wall. It might not even be your face, you know. If you want to show people who you really are, it might not be your face. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? If you were to draw a self-portrait, but it wasn't your face, could it still work? Of course it could. Of course it could. Because you could still encapsulate your persona by other means, couldn't you? Sharpen this charcoal. It's got a bit of bark showing. Yeah, so as I said, I've got no problem with doing the same thing over and over again, the subject being the same thing. I think the evolution thing really is how much better I've become at capturing the essence. I think that's probably, and it's, you know, repetition is obviously the key to all this, but the repetition of intent as opposed to repetition of execution. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't want to keep drawing in the same way, but I do want to keep responding in the same way. So my intention is that it's to respond to a face and respond to their essence. That's the repetition part of it. How the execution happens is irrelevant, really, because it'll just happen, won't it? I don't have to think about it. It's not irrelevant as in it doesn't matter. It does matter, but it's not me considering it. Oh, next time I'm going to be tighter with the lines, or next time I'm going to be smoother with the blends, or whatever. None of that matters. The eyes need a bit of adjustment. Not much though. There's another thing about the doing it over and over again thing. I think I automatically measure things now. I think that's the I started with the dots and trying to, and you saw me scribble initially with this, and I do that just to sort of lay the groundworks, if you like, and but it's to a point now where the comparison thing, the relationship comparison thing, is completely habitual now. I'm not doing any of it deliberately. Which I think is where you want to be, isn't it? You want to develop that kind of habit. There are some habits like mark making that I don't want to develop, because that then ultimately leads to a style. But and I don't want a style, because I think that once I've got a style, I'll stop looking and start just doing the style. So I don't want to just do the style. But certain things, like, as I said, assessment of locations in relationship to other things, I want that to be habitual. I don't have to keep thinking about that, or is that here low enough and all that. I don't want to have to keep, doing that. I mean, I do it. You'll see me sometimes looking at doing that kind of stuff, but I don't want it to be too much of a conscious thing, because it's going to get in the way of my response, isn't it? That's the thing I want the response to be the dominant part of it, and the other stuff is just a means to an end. But people would say that you'd learn skills to do that. You practice your proportions and all that sort of divisions and I know they said grammar, I don't know why, but your geometry, you do all that. But the trouble with that is that they become the dominant. They become the thing that you focus on, rather than the response. So once they become dominant, then your response takes second place. Getting things in the right place becomes the first criteria. I'm going back to that Chinese thing. That's what they were talking about. But getting things in the right place, and sometimes that's not such a big deal. When there are some great artists out there that don't get eyes in the right place and don't get noses and ears in the right place, but they make great portraits. So it's a funny one. I say I'm not trying to think too much about this. I'd rather just, these guys had to go at me. I leave all that stuff to him. But I just like drawing faces. It's just that. I just like drawing faces. What's wrong with that? Nothing at all. Nothing at all. A forehead's a bit small and the chin's a bit long, and those are kind of observations that I'll make as I'm going along and try and fix things. I think the only fix for this is to make the forehead a little bit bigger, so the forehead's kind of up there like that. It's not that far off, but that will then throw everything else. One of the things I would say that I've kind of learned the hard way, if you like, is that there are things that affect things. So we're saying, oh, the chin's too big or whatever. There are things like that that aren't necessarily true. So you get blinded by other things that's on the face. So, for instance, this is one of the occasions where the forehead isn't quite tall enough, and it becomes a dominant. And one of the things about drawing anything dark to start with is putting a lot of tone on something to start with. It can create a dominant element, and the dominant element then can throw all your comparisons out, because this dominant element is basically making everything look wrong, because you're making, even though you don't know it, you're making comparisons all the time. This is what we do when we see faces anyway. So ideally, it's you try not to make dominant elements too soon. So people say get the blacks down first and all that kind of thing. You do that if you're drawing freehand. If you're doing that, you're gonna just mess up your comparative measurement, and that's not. I'm not talking about the comparative thing that is a thing. I'm talking about the way you visually compare to things. The relationships. If you've got a dominant element, it will be overbearing of the other elements. And then when you say, look at the chin, and the chin's too big, it's not the chin's too big. It was the forehead that wasn't big enough. It's crazy stuff like that. But those are, as I said, I learned the hard way. And I think probably the only way I've been able to get around that is drawing everything all at once. Drawing the hair, drawing the eyes, drawing the chin, everything gets drawn all at once, and that way you're making comparisons with everything all the time, and not getting bogged down by one thing, doing it completely wrong, which is often the case, as I said to you before about that woman that spent all morning drawing the eyes and came back in after lunch and realized the eyes were in the wrong place. That you don't get that kind of thing happening. Because obviously, if you finish orientated, if you're execution orientated, you can get bogged down by stuff like that and forget about everything else, and all of a sudden, the eye's in the wrong place, and it's not good. It's not fun. I think the other thing about it is, well, when you see me do the scribbling thing, and it goes, you can see that one, for instance, that one's on the verge of becoming a finished drawing, and you could take that to the next stage, but because at this stage it works, it's not a problem to make it work at the next stage, which to put more finish in it. So I've established the correctness of everything, but I've also created some really nice effects and really nice marks and things, which I don't want to lose. So I don't want to finish it. I want it to be like this. And as I say, that's kind of a side effect of working on the set, everything all at once. You get this you get the effect of getting things in the right place, obviously, but also the feeling that it doesn't need to be as finished as you think it does, in order for it to be, to communicate the essence of this individual. So because you can do it with little or no effort and very little time, and the marks, and the tones applied, and it still feels right, because you're doing it all at once. So it's like the drawing evolves and reveals itself early on because of this approach, that everything all at once approach. So, and then you've got to ask the question, well, no matter what I do after this, it won't make an awful lot of difference, because I've already caught, like that woman in the hat, I've already caught the essence of that woman, how much more would how much more better would it be if it was all detailed and you knew exactly what the texture of the hat was and all the rest of it? Would it make it any different? No, it wouldn't, would it? And that's what I think is the problem with a lot of people, is because then all of a sudden this lack of need to produce with accuracy and finish, the lack of need for that all of a sudden opens up all kinds of possibilities. And hang on a minute, I don't have to learn all this stuff. I don't have to learn to I mean, you have to learn to see and to be able to coordinate, observation is the key, but you have to learn to do that. But other than that, everything else you don't need. If you need it, you'll learn it. But if you don't need it, you won't learn it. And it's one of those things that style skills are a consequence of intention. It's one of those things that you it's not selective, but it actually it's relevant. It's relevant to the way that you see the world. So you're not accumulating skills you don't need. That's what I'm trying to get to. But the realization that you don't need skills is the key. That's the real eye opener. You don't need skills to be able to do this. You need to be able to see with accuracy. If representation is your response, you need to be able to see with accuracy. But it may not be representation that's your response. It might be something else. The way you see a face might be different to the way I see a face. So consequently, we will produce. This is back to the Chinese thing. We will have a different outcome. And isn't that the best way, right? Every art college, every art school should endeavour to produce artists that produce work that is unique to them, as opposed to being exactly like every other artist that's ever been to that academy. So, there's flaws in that really, I think, illustrate the problem with the art world. Too many people doing it the same way. And that it's back to this guy that wants to define what I do as repetition and uninspired and lacks evolution, because it doesn't fit with his narrative of what art is. But like I say, that's the problem with the art world. There are too many people that think they know what art is. See, I prefer not to even consider art. It's just being creative. If someone wants to call it art, that's fine. But I'm just being creative. I'm just doing something that I love. You know what I mean? I said that this morning. I'm just doing something that I love. If you want to call it art, that's fine. I'm not going to call it art. I'm not even going to say I'm an. I struggle to say I'm an artist. That's if I'm honest. I just like to say that I help people make great portraits, and as a consequence, obviously, you can see that I make portraits. But it's this idea that there is a definition of what art is the problem, because I think everything is art. The guys rightly said that everything's art, but the problem is that it's not for us to define, if you know what I mean. It's not for artists to define. It's for artists just to create. Just create. You know what I mean? Just do it. Just create. If the world wants to call it art, then let them call it art. But as far as I'm concerned, we're just gonna have fun, and we're just gonna create. Anyway, I think I'm done with this, and I just want to. I think I'm going to have to balance things. This is another thing that that is. It's a value thing. That's what it is. But for me, balancing values, tones, is a big deal, and it's a thing that makes gives shape form. Light gives shape form, gives shape form. That's what they say. So, and that's really what balancing the tones is. But it's partly the medium, because sometimes the medium isn't black enough, so you've got to work with a parameter. So your black scale, right? You've got your scale and black. I'm not going to draw on there here, but let's say your scale of black is very black through to almost invisible light. This charcoal will do that. Some will only have that range from that grey, which is like a graphite, to almost invisible. And because I still want to create the form, I've got to create, if that's all the scale that I've got, the bandwidth of my tonal ability is that, then I've got to work within that. If it's that, I can work within that, but it still has to always have form, and that is what I'd call balance. And I've just chucked my rubber away, so hold on a minute. Damn, I'm desperate now. I'm desperate. That's the only rubber I've got now. So it's getting really desperate, which is why I'm smudging and not really rubbing out anything. But that's the thing with tones. I mean, I say I'm hung up on that side, which is why I won't talk about values or talk about having value scales, because sometimes you can't. People who have the luxury of tools that will create a full scale of tones will talk about values, but sometimes we don't. Either the paper or the charcoal or whatever it is, the medium you've got won't allow you to create or recreate the tonal values you see in the subject. So you've got to work with what you've got. You know what I mean? And that's where it becomes about balance. So is it balancing? Is that tone there balancing with that tone there? Is that the dark that replicates that dark? You know, it's that kind of thing. And if the balance it creates, dictates the form. So it's not complicated, but I kind of know when I look at it, I just know that there has to be more balance, more unity, I suppose, in the tonal values, and that's one of the things. I spend a long time doing that. If anything, that I would say afterwards, I'd spend more time fixing the balance than anything, because it's that for me that gives the whole thing form. The other thing I said about the tonal range. The other thing about the tonal range is that if you create tone, like say on this one, I've created tone with hatching. That's a tonal value that I've created. So I've got to balance with that. It's not about the medium not being able to get dark enough or not being able to replicate that tone. It's about me and my response creating a tonal value which has got to balance with everything else. And it's irrespective of execution. It's irrespective of the the blending or what the tool will do. It's not about that. It's just so happens that I've created that tonal value like this with marks and irregular hatching. So I've got to then balance that with everything else. So it sounds complicated, but it's not. It's not. I think when you're looking at it, you'd understand about the balance thing, but. And when you're doing it, I think you'd also understand about the balance thing. It's only when you try and analyze it as a replication of values, then it becomes a little bit more complicated, and it demands that you actually apply the medium in such a way that replicates the values. So, as I say, I'm done with this. So I'm going to tweak things. I'm going to sort out our eyebrows and our eyelashes on that side, and the things that you see that out of balance there. See that? So I'm going to fix things like that. It may not just be a case of tapping it off, but I need to just fix those kind of things. Yeah, already better. And just about done. I think round there it needs a little bit of tonal balance around the eyes, a little bit. You can see this here. This is a tonal issue there. The highlights are always a little bit misleading, because you kind of and especially if you're going to whip out the old white charcoal, white highlights can be very deceiving. Oh, it needs to be a highlight there, so you'll go and chase it, and sometimes it's better for them not to be a white highlight. It somehow it makes everything out of balance by having extreme highlights, which in a way, when I'm dissing this rubber being a load of rubbish because it's blending rather than rubbering or removing, shall I say. But in a way, it's a good thing because it's not taking it back to white. It doesn't need to be back to white. Highlights sometimes are just something that's a bit lighter. That's all it is. It's just a bit lighter there. That's not a highlight. It's just a bit lighter. And that is a thing as well. People get hung up on, I've just drawn this and the highlights and it's shiny and it looks real and all that rest of it. And the eye is perfect and everything. But that level of replication determines everything else. You know, once you set back to balance, once you set these as this highlight there is really a bright highlight, everything else, wherever highlights appear, have to be in line with that. They have to balance. So you've got to be careful with, and if this is out, if it's too white, you're going to get a funny kind of turbulence on the face. And you've seen the undulation thing. You know, when people do the grey tone photograph type of thing, and they use lots of white chalk on it, and the face goes like it's like wrapped in cooking film. You know, it's that undulation thing. It's because they haven't adhered to the balance. That's all. And the main thing, because because putting white highlights on things, the tip of the nose, eyeballs, all that kind of thing, it just makes it look more real. You know, highlights on the lip makes it look more real. So people fall for that, because they're trying to make it look real. They fall for that, and it just doesn't work. Anyway, so as I said, I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll just worry about the balance of things, and yeah, it's worked out all right. That so I just draw faces because I like drawing faces. Right. All right, I'll catch you later.